On a brisk Saturday morning, November 2nd, 2016, the Morgan twins began a ritual as old as their bond. Ethan Morgan, 41, owned a modest electronics repair shop in Boulder, Colorado. His brother, Ryan, 37, worked night shifts loading cargo at a Denver logistics company. Despite their busy schedules, the two made it a point to escape to the wild every November, honoring a family tradition. They weren't just hunters. They were explorers, drawn to the towering Rockies, where their father had taught them every secret trail. That particular day, Ethan triple-checked the supplies, placing the last containers of soup and a foldable stove into their dark blue Toyota Tacoma. Ryan, ever meticulous with safety, inspected each hunting rifle, ensuring they operated flawlessly. A few blocks away, Ethan's wife, Claire, a pediatric nurse, saw them off with a smile and a hug. They'd been married 6 years, but hadn't decided about kids. Ryan, on the other hand, lived in a studio apartment surrounded by sci-fi books and pizza boxes. The brothers left Boulder just after sunrise, following the familiar route west along Highway 34, aiming for the remote Arapahoe National Forest. Their destination was Willow Creek Basin, a secluded area they'd visited since their teens, where the air seemed fresher and the rivers ran impossibly clear. The journey stretched nearly 5 hours, and the forecast called for crisp, cloudless days, perfect for hunting mule deer. By noon, they stopped at a small gas station in the lonely town of Granby. The clerk recalled the brothers later. They joked about whose aim was rustier after a year, bought extra batteries, propane, and enough jerky for an army. Ethan paid, slapping his credit card loudly, while Ryan nursed a thermos of black coffee. 2 hours of winding dirt roads awaited, the last 15 miles marked by switchbacks and thick pine woods where cell service vanished. As they approached the turnoff to Willow Creek, Ethan texted Claire to say all was well and promised to call as soon as they set up camp. That was the last anyone heard from the Morgan twins. When Monday arrived, and Ethan didn't check in, as he always did after every trip. Claire's worry grew. Her calls went straight to voicemail. A quick call to Ryan's supervisor revealed he hadn't shown up at work either. By Tuesday morning, Claire filed a missing persons report, and soon after, a search party began combing the area. They found the Tacoma parked exactly as the brothers always left it, neatly, almost ceremoniously, just beyond a fallen pine, doors locked, keys atop the dashboard. Inside, everything remained. Unopened food, sleeping bags, even the hunting rifles locked away in their case. Oddly, both men's wallets, phones, completely dead, and over $400 in cash lay untouched in the glove box. The only sign of recent activity was a small clearing some 600 yards away, where the remains of a carefully covered campfire and a circle of footprints told a silent story. Cans and water bottles, discarded yet arranged, punctuated the eerie sense that whatever happened next did not involve panic. Отлично. Продолжаю рассказывать уникальную историю. Часть 2. Сначала английский текст, затем русский перевод. To Part 2. As the search stretched on, rangers and volunteers traced every footpath and riverbank within a 10-mile radius. Search dogs picked up Ethan and Ryan's scent, leading into a dense corridor of aspens, but lost it on a rocky ridge. Tracks vanished where wind had stripped away the leaves. The only other clue was a faded campfire found 3 miles upriver, surrounded by scattered animal bones, and 2 snares, expertly made, but worn by weather and time. Local hunters claimed that nobody had camped there in months. By the end of the week, the search effort ballooned. Scientists joined in, mapping the terrain with drones, while helicopters combed the forest from above. The November cold thickened, snow dusted the peaks, and the window for finding the twins alive began to slip away. After nearly a month, when snowplows blocked the mountain roads and the creek froze solid, The search was called off. Ethan and Ryan Morgan were declared missing, their case shelved as yet another unsolved Rocky Mountain mystery. Claire refused to accept it. In the spring thaw, she posted flyers from Denver to Grand Lake and hired a private investigator with a reputation for resolving lost hiker cases. Volunteers scoured the woods, retracing routes, asking hunters and trappers if they'd seen or heard anything unusual. But year after year, the silence of those wild woods persisted. It was as if the Morgan twins had stepped off the earth without a ripple. Online forums buzzed with theories. Some insisted the men had met with a bear or mountain lion, or simply fallen into a ravine. Others whispered of criminal involvement, illegal camps, hidden drug crops, or even cult activity rumored in Colorado's deeper wilderness. The only certainty was the chilling lack of evidence. It would be 3 years before the story shifted. On the cold morning of January 14, 2020, Officer Mia Carter at the Kremling Sheriff's Department received a startling visitor. A gaunt man in ragged layers, barefoot and wild-eyed, shuffled through the sliding glass doors. His cheekbones jutted desperately, beard tangled, hands trembling. Quietly, he gave his name. Ethan Morgan. At first, Mia assumed he was a vagrant searching for shelter, perhaps confused or mentally ill. But when Ethan recited in detail the route he and his brother had taken, the highway gas station, even a favorite joke their father used to tell, she called for medical help and notified the state police. His fingerprints and an old surgical scar soon confirmed his identity. Ethan was immediately taken to the hospital. Doctors found him severely malnourished, with multiple scars, some recently healed, some older, and signs of frostbite on his feet. For days he hardly spoke, his eyes darting at every sound. Trauma specialists noted classic symptoms of prolonged captivity and extreme stress. It was only after a week, aided by gentle caregivers and sleep, that Ethan began to tell his story. According to Ethan, their first night in Willow Creek Basin was calm until sometime around midnight. He awoke to rough voices and the slicing glare of flashlights cutting through the tense nylon. Several figures burst inside. They wore masks. Strange, hand-stitched things made from burlap and animal hide. Before either brother could react, sacks were hauled over their heads, their wrists and ankles bound. Ethan remembered the freezing soil scraping his skin as they were dragged, blind and helpless, away from the camp. The ordeal that followed was nightmarish. The twins were marched, stumbling, for what felt like hours, through icy streams, over hidden stones. Their captors spoke little, communicating with curt commands. When the bags were finally removed, Ethan and Ryan found themselves inside a deep pit reinforced with logs and covered by a crude lattice of heavy branches. 2 other men sat opposite them, gaunt and silent. The new prisoners seemed broken, their eyes clouded by fear and hunger. Over the next days, Ethan pieced together fragments of the group's twisted world. The captors were a secretive band hiding deep in the national forest. They called themselves the Children of the Hollow, led by a gray-haired patriarch known only as Reverend. The group believed civilization was poisoned and sought purity through sacrifice and endurance. They survived off wild roots, scavenged game, and what little they stole from hikers and abandoned cabins. Their captives, Ethan realized, were considered offerings necessary for the group's survival and spiritual cleansing. Cruelty was their norm. Food was minimal occasional strips of raw, bloody venison, cups of snowmelt, bitter roots chewed until gums bled. The prisoners were routinely forced to kneel in the icy mud, chant hymns, or stand for hours, arms raised, as the Reverend recited rambling sermons about testing the soul through deprivation. Anyone who faltered, the older captive did once, was beaten to unconsciousness with sticks. Ryan struggled most. He whispered plans to escape at night, but was endlessly watched. Weeks blurred into months. With winter deepening, frostbite gnawed at their hands, and hunger sharpened every sensation into agony. One afternoon, after a failed escape by the younger captive, who vanished afterward, the prisoners' lives grew harder. Guards became more aggressive. Ethan's ribs were broken after a whispered prayer. As spring arrived, the prisoners were pressed into forced labor-building crude shelters, digging new pits for future guests, fetching firewood from farther away. It was then that Ryan made his final bid for freedom. During a particularly stormy night, as lightning shredded the sky and guards sheltered in a cave, Ryan slipped free. Ethan watched his brother vanish into the trees, heart pounding, hoping for once that something would break right. But in the morning, Reverend and his followers returned, stone-faced, dragging Ryan between them. As punishment for betrayal, he would serve, they said, as the foundation for our salvation. Before Ethan's eyes, Ryan was tied to a post and beaten until all struggle stopped. That evening, his body was taken deep into the bogs, where the ground could mask all evidence. Broken in body and spirit, Ethan knew that survival meant total obedience. He worked, starved, endured. Sometimes the group took him with them, hunting an ordeal in itself, tracking deer through thick woods, with nothing but clubs and old knives. The seasons turned. Escape always seemed impossible. One fateful morning, nearly 3 years after his captivity began, a bear raided the camp. Amid the chaos and screams, Ethan seized his chance, bolting through the underbrush into freezing water, crawling, climbing, never stopping, until the mountains blurred behind him. He wandered, half mad with exhaustion and terror, living off snow and roots, until at last, cold and weary, he stumbled onto the edge of a county road, where a trucker found and rescued him. Ethan's return set off a storm of investigation across Colorado. State police, FBI agents, and Forest Service rangers converged on Willow Creek Basin. Ethan, still frail but resolute, traced the likely direction of the cult's camp, describing landmarks, the twisted pine where he was forced to chop wood, the scorched stone circle where Reverend preached, and the reeking bogs that had swallowed his brother. But 3 years of shifting seasons had remade the landscape. Fallen logs, fresh undergrowth, and new landslides meant the old paths were mostly gone. Tracking teams, dogs, even drones and heat-sensing cameras were deployed. For weeks, they combed the woods for signs of the Children of the Hollow. They found remnants, crude shelters barely standing beneath snow, pits full of old deer bones, the faded outline of a fire ring surrounded by melted, wind-flattened masks made from animal skin. In one mud-choked hollow, searchers uncovered a pit. Inside lay scraps of tattered clothing, and, wrapped in faded canvas, the remains of a man. Dental records and DNA confirmed what Ethan already knew. Ryan's ordeal had ended there. News of the discovery swept across the region. National headlines branded it the Willow Creek Cult Mystery. Fear and speculation gripped the nearby towns. Tips poured in sightings of thin, wild-looking people hiking the back roads or stealing supplies from abandoned cabins. For months, the authorities chased leads, and soon arrests followed. In a half-collapsed barn near a ghost town, police found 3 cult members, filthy and emaciated, hiding out with stolen camping gear and crude weapons. One was the Reverend himself. Real name Daniel Archer, a drifter, with a long record of violence and untreated mental illness. The other 2, Catherine Parks and Mason Hill, had been missing persons themselves from earlier years, lured in and broken by Archer's charisma. Psychological evaluations confirmed that while all 3 were unstable, they had full awareness of their crimes. Ethan, battered by flashbacks and survivor's guilt, testified at trial. He described in riveting detail the torture of captivity, the systematic destruction of hope, and the guilt of helplessly witnessing his brother's end. Physical evidence, recovered diaries, and the masks sealed the prosecution's case. The trial lasted months. Archer received a life sentence without parole. His accomplices each got over 25 years. Acknowledging their manipulation, the court ordered extended psychiatric treatment. After the verdict, Ethan attempted to start again. The world felt brighter, but forever changed, too loud, too exposed. He moved far north, took a quiet job tending greenhouse flowers, and spoke rarely to those who knew him before. Claire visited once and tried to bridge the gap, but time and trauma had forged an unspoken distance too great to cross. The Willow Creek case spawned renewed patrols across Colorado's wildlands. Unchecked isolation, it seemed, could hide horrors for years. Sometimes, hikers leave nothing behind but shadows in the snow. But thanks to persistence and a stroke of luck, one brother's story finally found the light. Years later, the legend of the Willow Creek twins lingered in the crisp Colorado air, whispered by rangers and campfire storytellers alike. Forest Service patrols still made their rounds, sometimes pausing at a weathered marker placed near the old search site, a simple plaque, etched with the names Ethan Ryan Morgan, and the words, "Gone, never forgotten." Most days, Ethan kept to himself in his cottage, surrounded by vines and flowering plants. But on certain autumn mornings, when the leaves blazed gold and the wind carried the wild scent of pine, he would walk the forest edge alone. He would stand beneath the towering aspens and close his eyes, listening to the rustle of branches and the distant calls of a red-tailed hawk. In these moments, he spoke softly to his brother, sharing memories no storm could erase. Sometimes, hikers passing on the trail glimpsed Ethan among the trees, pausing for a long time by the old creek bed, head bowed in quiet thought. They did not approach. Something in his posture, in the hush around him, suggested a communion deeper than grief. Back in town, Claire now remarried, at peace, tended to a neat garden filled with forget-me-nots and wild columbine, still thinking sometimes of Ethan's gentle smile and the ordinary love that once tethered them. Willow Creek had changed everyone it touched, but life continued, bolder, more vigilant, more aware of the thin line between wilderness and civilization. And deep in the hills, beyond any sign or fence, the wind whistled through the high branches, scattering the last echoes of a tragedy that finally had a name, a face, and, at last, an ending.